Okay, I see people in the comments. We're doing things, y'all. Okay, let's get started.
Love it.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to season three at Creator Tea Talk, episode one. And this is very exciting because for those who have been following me for a while, Creator Tea Talk is something that started like 2 years ago on LinkedIn as a live audio series when Clubhouse got weird, Twitter Spaces got weird, and I was like, let's go on LinkedIn of all places. And it has kind of grown into a larger community and brand where we're now also doing all types of events, including in person. And for those who don't know me, my name is Jayde Powell. I'm a social strategist and content creator, and I've been working in marketing and advertising for over 12 years. And I'm really excited to have these conversations just because one of my main focuses is as someone who has worked on the brand side and also works as a creator influencer, I've just noticed like there's just not a lot of standardization. Things aren't always very clear. So my goal is to make sure that creators and people who work on the brand side feel really comfortable having conversations because I believe that in order to have an equitable creator economy, we need to be very honest about what goes on the inside. So, with that said, I'm very excited to welcome my all women panel. It's Women's History Month, so this feels very appropriate. Ladies, feel free to introduce yourselves.
I can go first. So I'm Brianna, founder of Verbatim. It's an influencer marketing agency. And then we also do some fractional marketing support as well. And then similar to you, Jayde, I am also a creator and influencer, but I've been in marketing for about 14 years. Only started creating content like 3 years ago at this point. So it is really cool to see. It is cool to see the disconnects between creators and brands. And I do think it's fun to help people bridge those gaps. And that's me.
Emily?
I do have to bring my tea in
Oh,
for
go ahead,
this.
Selena.
Um,
Please. Very appropriate.
my name is Selena Beaumont. I've previously worked in book publishing, podcast, speakers bureaus, and many other things prior to influencer marketing. I've done campaign execution and creator partnerships at Whaler and at the Captions app, and now I help creators repurpose their content to make even more money.
Awesome. I'm Emmy. I am an analyst at eMarketer, where I cover a bunch of different topics across marketing and retail, but mostly the creator economy. Previously, I was the editorial lead at Hashtag Paid, and I started my career as a creator economy social media reporter at Adweek.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. And before we get into the questions, I did want to let everyone in the chat know, feel free to drop your questions and you can drop them in now or later. We're going to open up the Q&A to all of you in the audience, but for now, I'm going to ask the ladies some questions and then we can get started now. So I feel like we can't kick off the episode without talking about what the title of the episode is, creator monetization. So what is creator monetization and what does it look like on social media and beyond? I ask that just because I know when we think about monetization, like the first instinct is social media sponsored content, but there's so much more as to what that could look like. So I want to hear from you. What does that experience look like for you as creators or just people that have worked on the brand side or just what you know in general? Who wants to take
Yeah,
it?
I can start. Yeah, so I think when we think about like your stereotypical influencer or creator or just the beginning stages of the creator economy, you definitely think about that in feed, post, brand sponsorship, and all that. But I think
Mhm.
now there's so much more of a push for long term relationships between brands and creators, which also allow for more creative ways to monetize. So I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of creators talk more recently about instead of just thinking about what can I do to monetize within a social media platform or through a post in my feed, how can I take the skills that I've maybe honed in on within social media and bring them externally? So I was talking to a creator who her content is all about like the psychology of friendships, and she does a
Mhm.
lot of brand deals on her pages, but she also went to speak at a corporate event at
Yeah.
like an internal event talking about what she's learned through research and through posting on TikTok. So I just thought that was a really interesting use case.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the speaking engagement piece because I feel like that's what is something, well, I've been leaning more into as a creator, but it's something I really try to get more creators and influencers to be aware of. Like, because I think when you hear speaking engagement, it doesn't sound like partnership. So it's like, that's not a monetization like channel or strategy. But to me, like some of the I guess like looking at some of the partnerships that I've had, having a speaking engagement is actually like baked into my contract in a larger way. So they might say like, "Hey, we want you to come talk on this panel," but there's also a sponsored content piece where we want you to talk about like the webinar or the panel that we're gonna have you on. Selena, Brianna, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, when I first started creating content and even as a marketer, I did think of it just as sponsored posts at first. Like speaking engagements are a great example. And I think it's, as a creator, it helps to think of it more as like, how can I monetize my brand, not just my content? So, like
Mm-hmm.
for me, writing is a big one. Publications pay me to write. Companies want me to like, guest write for them. That's still
Mm-hmm.
monetization and has nothing to do with like a sponsored post within my feed. And so, just thinking about the ways, to Emmy's point, like the skills that you've really started to sharpen and craft. Um, I just think, yeah, there are multiple ways to monetize, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, we love a multiple income stream for sure.
We do. We do.
100%. And the only thing that I wanted to add is that I kind of like to think of it as a solar system. And so you have marketing, you have sponsored content, but you also have affiliate marketing, you have paid performance in the form of UGC ads, you have services. So if you are a creator that also has a specialty or niche where you can provide coaching or courses or things like that, it all kind of lives in one ring. And then you kind of step out and you go into speaking engagements, you go into your own podcast, you go into your own book, perhaps, your own show. There goes my cat making a dramatic appearance. But all these different layers and potential that all stem from the content that you're producing, which has an emotional touch point that resonates with people. It's just a matter of finding the mediums that can actually reach new audiences.
Yeah, and I think ecosystem is a great word that you use. In one of my webinars, I'm doing a little self promo. In one of my webinars that I launched this year, I was talking about what I called like the content ecosystem. Basically, these means for content or these avenues for content that you can then like work with brands to monetize on. So that could be an email newsletter, that can be your blog, that can be hosting webinars, that can be lives like this, that can be sponsored content. There's so many ways to monetize. And what I would always recommend to creators and influencers is to think about the channels and platforms you want to live on, and what type of content you actually want to be monetizing. Because you may not necessarily want to monetize all of your content, but think about the things that feel a little bit more organic or natural in a partnership. So I've seen a lot of creators like just start on social and then they like kind of navigate over to email newsletters to really own their audience, and then they monetize there. And then from email newsletter, it's like then blog content on their website. So there's so many touch points that you can take, but it's nice to like diversify so that you can have those multiple income streams. Emmy, you were talking a little bit about like the brand partnerships, and we alluded to creators and influencers really kind of leaning into like sponsored content because that's what they think about first. But I'm curious in general, do you think creators rely too much on brand deals, or are there any other ways that you feel like creators should be thinking about how they make money?
I think that it's not necessarily that they rely too much on deals, but I think that they are maybe limiting themselves in the way that they're approaching their relationships with brands.
Yeah,
For example, I think that when you come to a brand, instead of approaching a brand deal of, Pepsi reaches out to you and they're doing a campaign and they want your amplification and access to your audience and they want you to post all this content after the campaign's already launched. Let's say you really want to work with a specific brand. I think that trying to position yourself as a creative strategist, as someone that can help out towards the beginning of the campaign, opposed to just someone that can come in and amplify the campaign and act as if they were a billboard for you, just like kind of in
yeah,
human form. I think there's so much more opportunity there, especially because creators know their audience so well. And I think creators should be pitching instead of, this goes back to monetization and knowing your rates, instead of just saying, I have this amount of followers and I have this engagement rate. Obviously, that's so important, but knowing like, this is the demographics of my audience and this is what I
hmm,
know about my audience and this is what you can learn from them, because creators really do have like focus groups that are
hmm,
built into social media that I feel like brands can benefit so much from. And so I think when we talk about like relying on brand deals, it's like not necessarily not doing that, but kind of like reimagining what a brand deal could look like.
Yeah.
And I feel like too, am I cutting anybody off? Okay, good. I feel like too, I completely agree with Emmy, and it's also when I think about the idea of relying too much on brand deals, I don't see it as relying too much on brand deals, but as a creator, I do kind of get concerned about relying too much on a certain social media platform.
Yeah.
Which, if you're only doing like sponsored posts, then I would say like, yeah, you're relying too much on it. Then, I mean, we saw it with Twitter. I refuse to call it X, but we saw it with Twitter. Like we see it just happening even with like the algorithm on different platforms. It's just so up and down. Like things are
Mm-hmm.
always changing. Who knows what's going to happen with TikTok? And so if you're creating these multiple touch points or like ways that brands can work with you and like experiences that you can create for your audiences, I think it's just creating a more like holistic brand for yourself, and you're not going to be so stuck if like a platform
Mm-hmm.
fails or goes away or you lose your audience.
Yeah.
I
Selena.
also think it depends on the kind of content creator that you want to be. If this is, say, supplementing your day job, you may not be able to maybe like capitalize on every single skill that you have, but brand deals are relatively consistent, and that may be the lane that you stay in. But as we've already kind of spoken about before, things change so quickly in this industry, whether it be something as big as the TikTok ban or whether it's as small as an algorithm change. Whatever you do, you should be able to future proof yourself and be able to look forward and keep as much creative control as you can in your own kind of space.
Mm-hmm. And one thing too, I think it's like about reimagining your role or your relationship to the brand. And Emmy, Selena, Brianna, you all kind of alluded to this. Like when I work with brand partners, I really like to think of myself as like the strategist, like you said, but also a creative director. Sure, brands may approach me with a brief and they have like very specific things that they want to campaign, but will do in the campaign. But I'm always thinking like, okay, how can I take this to the next level? What are some additional things I should be considering? How can I make this more of a moment? And because we are people as creators that know our audiences very well, know what they're interested in, that's like the leverage that you have. You're in a unique position to say, I know my audience best. So this is what I know is going to perform, or this is what I know is going to get really a lot of engagement or a lot of reactions. I think sometimes creators and influencers rely too much on the brand to kind of be the final decision maker. And I get it because, you know, you're working with these brands, you feel really excited and you're like, oh, I'm about to get this paper. And it's like, yes. And make sure you're also setting yourself up for success and make sure you're setting your community up for success because they may see that content and be like, girl, what the fuck is this? I've never seen you create anything like this. Or they might be like, this doesn't even feel like you. And that's embarrassing. Like, that's what you don't want to happen. So you really have to kind of like find a way to kind of take control of the narrative, even if you are getting a brief. And then the beautiful flip side is like, when you have great relationships with brand partners or you feel super comfortable shooting your shot, like send them your ideas. A lot of brand partnerships I've gotten have been because I've taken the initiative and been like, hey, I see an opportunity. Here's what we should do. And they'll be like, cool. And it's great because for a lot of like influencer marketing professionals, social media marketing professionals, people who work on the creator side, they don't want to do that extra work anyway. They got like internal KPIs that they're working. Selena said T. They have other things that they're trying to worry about. So with that said, again, to Emmy's point, think of yourself as a strategist, but to my point, think of yourself as a creative director. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about like basically how much influencers and creators are making. I feel like that's like a big conversation amongst like creator economy professionals and people involved. But I did want to point out an article that I recently read that was written on Forbes.com by Kristen Boskett. Kristen, if you're watching this, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. Follow her on LinkedIn. She's such a great writer. But she essentially did an interview of like 5 different marketers or 5 creator economy professionals, and she asked all of them what they would pay Molly Nelson, who is a creator who has about 100,000 followers on TikTok and 27,000 followers on Instagram, for a TikTok video and an Instagram reel. And what was shocking to me was like the range of rates that they provided. So they range from as low as $275 to as high as $20,000. Obviously, that's a very large gap. So knowing that there are a lot of factors that marketers kind of are considering internally when they're budgeting for creator campaigns, what are some of the things that creators should prioritize when they're creating their rates? And I want to ask that just because I feel like the question is often, well, how much should I be charging? But it's like there's a lot more consideration than before that you have to think about before you even get the answer to that question.
I will say, like, I get this question from creators a lot, and I always encourage them first and foremost to zoom out and think of, let's say it's a specific brand you want to work with. It's like Stanley or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you don't know what to charge Stanley. That's fine. But do you know what their goals are and like how your audience or your content or your reach will actually help them achieve those goals? I think it's really important to
Yeah.
think of the brand as like a client or a customer. Because as creators, I'll be honest, like when I put my creator hat on, yeah, like how much should I charge? Like how much are you
Mm-hmm.
going to pay me for this? As a
Mm-hmm.
marketer, I can negotiate rates with you, but like I have a manager waiting for our next one-on-one where I have to break down what I accomplished, like how that influencer campaign drove results, all that stuff. And so making
Yeah.
sure that you're actually, whatever you're delivering to them, however you're pitching to them, like focus first and foremost on how you can help them reach their goals. It's going to make negotiations a lot easier. I just wanted to call that out before anything else.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
I think something else that's important to keep in mind is the fact that when brands are investing more in influencer marketing, they're typically taking budget away from a different channel. So right now
Mm-hmm.
it's typically like um, linear TV, maybe they're investing less in that and putting that in influencer marketing. And I think kind of asking questions early on of like how, as much of as a brand will be able to share about what their strategy is for like how they're optimizing each of these channels or how much they're investing in these channels. And understanding like, can you create content that could be repurposed on different channels, or can you get a better understanding of where they might use this content? Because I think, if they're looking to invest in influencer marketing by drawing like dollars away from other channels, how can you actually like make that money work harder for them?
Yeah.
So I think just like early on asking a lot of like business heavy questions and just saying like, how are you breaking up your budget, like where are you really investing, I think can like position you better to create content that maybe they can leverage like across their strategy.
Agree. And I think that goes back to what you were saying again about being a strategic partner. I kind of look at the relationship between brands and creators and influencers almost like a brand approaching an agency. So if you're not familiar with like marketing for people who are listening, brands who have a lot going on internally will often outsource agencies to help them bring their creative work to life. I do this as a freelancer. On the social side, I work with many agencies where it'll be like these global brands and they need help because their team internally may be like small or they may not have like the resources that they need. So they'll work with these agencies, and our job is really to take their brief, get their goals, understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then us as creators, we say, okay, this is what the plan that we're going to create to make sure that you accomplish your goals. And that's what you should be doing as a creator. It's a lot of extra mental work, but it is what's going to be, it's going to be the thing that's going to set you apart from other creators and influencers who are just like looking for their next check. And then it's better for longevity and sustainability of your relationship because now you've positioned yourself as a strategic partner. So you are going to be this like ongoing resource. Like it's not just, oh, Jay's just an influencer that we worked with last year. And it's like, actually, no, she thought of this whole entire campaign, was able to use her connections to bring in other influencers and creators. Then we turned it into an in-person event, and then we got 100 email leads. Like think of things holistically.
I think just to add to that, there are a lot of companies now that are incorporating influencer marketing and are very new to the business as a whole. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, Jade, there's an element of education there, and that kind of influences the various different price points that are going on. So, there's a difference between someone who is new to the business and maybe doesn't understand that $100 isn't appropriate for 5 videos. There will always be brands that try to take advantage and will go out with the $100 price point anyway. And then
Mm-hmm.
there are brands that have been doing this for a little bit who are invested in it and either have creator programs or larger budgets or dedicated teams to it.
Yeah.
One thing that I like to tell creators is to read the fine print. And so there are base metrics that people will always base their pricing off of, which is like engagement rate, conversion rates, impressions, things like that. But what are you trading for the money? Does the brand want to use your content for 50 years? Do they want to translate your content into different languages? Do they want to use your likeness in perpetuity? So not only is it about like the nice stuff, like, oh wow, you have 1 million followers, it's also just getting into the nitty-gritty and saying, okay, what exactly does the brand want from me, and am I comfortable exchanging that for the price that's given?
Yeah. One thing I want to ask y'all too, because we basically, the lead up to this question is everything that we just talked about before. We talked a lot about having multiple income streams so that you can really take advantage of all the opportunities to monetize your content or monetize your brand. But I'm curious, do you feel like creators should, I guess, like, I would, let me not use that word. I was going to say force. Force is a terrible word. Do you think creators should have multiple income streams, or do you think they can just like thrive off of one, not have to do a whole bunch of things across channels or platforms?
I think that I don't necessarily agree with the culture of like you should monetize absolutely everything, because then I
Hmm.
think that ends up creating a situation where a creator started a podcast that really shouldn't have a podcast because they're not podcasty. I feel like everyone
Yeah.
knows who I'm talking about. Um, and I think that that ends up leading a creator to burn out too, because they're like, I'm
Hmm.
actually not doing something that I'm super passionate about. I don't think this represents who I am or my content. So I think in terms of like deciding what how you want to monetize or what your income streams are, I feel like it should be a healthy balance of what do you actually want to do and what would fulfill you so you don't burn
Hmm.
out and you want to stay in the industry. And
Hmm.
also like what your audience actually wants. Because I think a lot of creators just are like, okay, this is another thing that could make me money, but like maybe their audience doesn't want to connect with them on that platform, or doesn't necessarily want to like subscribe to another newsletter and wants them to lean more into YouTube content. So I think it's like being in tune with your audience and yourself will probably
Yeah.
like give you a lot of answers there.
Heavy on the be in tune with yourself because that's like the most important thing for sure. One of the things I feel like I'm constantly telling my friends who are like interested in getting into the world of creator is like the first thing you have to do is create for yourself and then create for your audience second, because it literally has to come out of like inspiration and a desire to do it, or else you're gonna burn yourself out or feel like you're just doing things for the sake of doing it, which is never fun. Brianna, Selena, did you want to add anything?
I just feel like it depends on your goals. I agree with, I feel like I keep saying that, but I agree with Emmy. Like, it does just depend on the level to which you want to grow this or scale this. Like, there are people who just want to create content on the side, maybe have a couple brand partnerships. There are others who
Hmm.
want to go as far as becoming a full time creator. Um, I think people in general should have multiple streams of income. I think it's
Agree.
okay if you only have one. Yeah, I think it's only okay if you have one that focuses on content creation. But yeah, to everybody's point, it is about being in tune with yourself. It's about being in tune with your bandwidth and what you can realistically and sustainably do. Like, it's
Yeah.
really easy to do a newsletter for a month. I'll tell you that. It's not so easy when you're in 12 months in and you don't want to write anymore. So,
Agree.
like, building something scalable and sustainable is a lot more important than just doing everything that can make you money. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's my
that
point.
was tea.
It's
Jade, I don't
true.
know if I'm allowed to ask you questions, but
Yeah,
have
go for
you
it.
started an income stream and then realized it like wasn't serving you and stopped it?
Yeah, it was actually this. Ironically, last year, I want to say when I launched Career Tea Talk on the Briefcase app on LinkedIn, I was like, okay, out the gate, I was like preparing a whole partnership stack for Creator Tea Talk, and I was like, I want to get every single episode sponsored, and then I was like, wait, I don't actually love the idea of this. I did end up actually getting 2 sponsorships. Shout out to Sprout, shout out to Attentive. It was great. But I think over time, I really felt like it took away from the like transparency of the conversation because there was like brand presence inserted. And then also I got really tired of trying to find partners, and I felt like trying to look for partners on time in accordance with the schedule in which I was running out the episodes was kind of being a hindrance, if anything. So over time I was just like, I don't care. Like, I don't need sponsors. I just need to like yap with my community because this is the intention behind it. And if you notice, this episode is not sponsored. So I haven't had any sponsors then. And I felt like this was the better way to go. And now I'm focused on building, my brand relationships in other ways. So agree, not everything needs to be sponsored just because I do feel like that would burn me out.
Wouldn't it be great if people on LinkedIn just like announced when they were going to stop doing something? Like, I
Yeah.
would love for people to be like, after
Yeah.
writing 3 newsletters, I've decided that I really don't want to do it anymore. I think that's
Yeah.
like, I'm like half joking, but also I just think like that is the energy we
Yeah.
need. Like, I think we need people to be transparent about when something is not serving them because of like
Yeah.
this whole hustle culture that we're a part of, where we feel like we have to fill every single gap of like peace in our lives with content
Mhm.
or like with
Completely agree.
productivity.
Yeah, I completely
I
agree.
volunteer as tribute. Like, I will follow your lead.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, you should do like name something that you like quit doing in the past year, and then everyone
Yeah.
can respond.
Yeah. No.
I just wanted to throw in one more I word that I think is related to Jade, what you were saying, which is intention, like intuition too. I think
Mhm.
a blend of intuition and strategy. You'll know when you're ready to start branching out more. And so just again, that self-trust and that self-belief and move when you're ready to move. Because if you rush it and you try to go across channels too quickly, you'll burn out. Your audience will know that it feels disingenuous, and then you start losing your own community, which is not really worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to your point, I know you were joking, but I am actually completely aligned. I do think like
I
there
better
is
see
a
that post on your
no,
feed tomorrow.
I was gonna say I actually kind of did something similar. There's this video series that I have called "A Bitch Be Contenting." If you know, you know. And I created this video, and there was probably like a 2 to 3 month gap between my last one, and it was technically supposed to be like a bi-weekly series. And literally, as soon as I opened the video, I was like, "Did you miss me?" Because I know I haven't posted this video in like 3 months. But I was talking about in the video about how just because like I took a pause doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a series. A series can be at whatever cadence you want it to be, and it doesn't have to constantly be this like ongoing, pressure to pump out something every month or every week. Like, it's funny because when I talk to creators, I feel like one of the questions I'm oftentimes asked is, how do you remain so consistent? And I always say that like consistency is very dependent on like where you are in your life and what do you want to be doing. It may change every season, every quarter, whatever that looks like. And I think from the social media marketing side, I feel like what people get confused is like the difference between consistency and cadence. Cadence is obviously like how many times you're going to be publishing something. And I'm actually not a believer. I'm not a believer in that whole like post once a day methodology. That's not my vibe. I always tell people lead with inspiration, lead with intention, like you were saying, Selena. And think about the things, or intuition, and think about the things that like feel natural to your body. Like, creativity is very spiritual work. It comes from the heart. And to think that you're about to jump on the timeline, jump in the newsletter, just pump out things and be like, go, 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 and it's going to make you feel good all the time is very incorrect. So,
I love
yeah,
the differentiation of like consistency versus cadence, because I feel
yeah,
like everyone knows that some days something takes more effort than others. It could literally just be
yeah,
like getting out of bed some days is easier than other days. Like for me, very much depending on the time of year, like being
mhm,
creative when it's like negative degrees out is like a lot more difficult when I can like than when I can like sit outside and write or read or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think that like maybe you can consistently make the effort to do something, and then that's
Mm-hmm.
what consistency looks like, but the cadence might vary because that effort might produce a different level of work depending on the
Yeah.
day or the season of your life. I think like that approach takes so much more of like a gentle so much more of like a gentle approach to creativity.
Agree. Gentleness. That's the reason for the season. Be
Yes.
gentle with yourself. Well, I feel like that's a lead up to the next question, which is perfect timing. So, how, knowing that we're talking about like doing things with intuition and just energetically making sure that you're aligning your creativity to like the output that you want to produce, how should creators decide which monetization streams are like worth their time and energy? What do you feel like are the kind of like key indicators in your brain that are telling you, okay, this is something I really want to tap into versus I don't ever want to see this in front of me?
I mean,
Lady.
I know this isn't measurable, but and it does require a certain level of self-awareness, but like what helps me is if a brand puts an opportunity in front of me and I just feel tired looking at it. Like if you just
Yes,
don't feel excited, that's okay. Like if you
that's
don't
so
feel
real.
happy about it, do you ever do that? Like you see it and maybe the money's good, but you're just like, all right,
Deep
okay,
sigh.
fine. Like pay my
Yes.
rent this month, it's fine. But it's like that's a sign, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think we just need to make
Hmm.
it clear it's okay to have a really good opportunity in front of you and say no because it's
Hmm.
just going to drain you or burn you out. And I think
Hmm.
it's important to pay attention to that. After a while, if you don't, I feel like that voice kind of starts to quiet,
Hmm.
and it's harder to know in the moment. So that's where I start. If
Yeah.
you hate the idea from the outset, I would recommend not continuing.
Yeah. Agree.
I feel
Selena,
like it's
any?
also I know there's a lot of apps. I can't remember the names of them, but like apps or platforms where you can look at the experiences that other creators have had with brands. And it sounds like it would be really beneficial for creators to look at either content like that or just try to find other like creator content from work with people who have like previously worked with that brand to see like how much does this align with like their regularly scheduled content? Does it look like the brand really took control
Hmm.
of the narrative? Because from like my side of the house, I feel like I talk to a lot of brands that are like preaching giving creators creative control, and then I talk to the creators and they're like that's actually not happening at all.
See?
So trying to like find, yeah, see, trying to find like the actual testimonials or like reaching out to creators and saying like, hey, what was your experience like with this brand? Did they control everything? Like I think just asking a lot of questions and like doing some investigative journalism beforehand could be
Yeah.
beneficial.
Yes, that's very writer coded of you.
Yes, exactly.
Selena?
I think there are opportunities that may provide cash a little faster than others, and there are opportunities that will lead and build upon new opportunities and new opportunities and new opportunities. So I work with a lot of creators who, for instance, have a dream to write a book. And one of the first things that I tell them is that please, you will not get rich from writing a book. It is a labor of love and heavy emphasis on the labor part. But the book is not only something meaningful to you as an experience as a creative, as putting in your ideas into words, it also leads to potentially speaking opportunities or
Hmm.
opening access to different venues that you may have not have access before. So when you compare that to, say, maybe like a digital product where you'll see the profit maybe a little bit faster on that front, it's just two different avenues and two different potential opportunities to take depending on what you want your goals to be in the end.
This
Yeah.
is a question for anyone that's done a brand deal because I, report on the industry, but I haven't actually been on the other side. Um, do you ever see like baked into contracts that a creator has is like or a brand is entitled to a certain amount of like rounds of edits on a
Hmm.
video?
Hmm.
Because that is
All
like,
the time.
All the time.
do
Yeah.
Video
people
and
know?
text, yeah.
Yeah, do people know to look for that? Because I would assume that that's definitely like a driving
Yeah.
force of if they're entitled to a million rounds of edits, it's like, okay, was this actually worth my time?
Yeah, I feel like it's not something that's always talked about really, but I think I knew going in as a creator, but that because I had like the experience working as a freelancer. And when you're a freelance creative in whatever capacity, writer, content creator, designer, like baking in those rounds of reviews and edits is always like essential in a contract. But I have noticed brands will be like, you know, unlimited, not necessarily the word is not unnecessary unlimited, but it's clear that the goal is for there to be unlimited rounds of review. And I would definitely caution, and I'm glad you said this, I mean, caution creators to really think about like what their limit is, because by the time a brand makes so many revisions, then it's like completely away from like what you thought this video or this asset was going to be from the get-go. So I love that you called
Totally.
that out.
Yeah, I think it's so it seems so like simple, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's table stakes maybe for other industries, like if you're a graphic designer or something like that.
Yeah.
But because like the creator economy is just so new, that it
Mm-hmm.
seems like a lot of these conversations haven't really been like fleshed out yet.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of creators are learning the hard way. Like when I think about my friends that
Mm-hmm.
are doing video based partnerships, they're baking that into the contracts now because they had one or two bad experiences where they did 59,000 reviews and edits. And I think
Yeah.
to Jade's point, like when you look back, let's say you have a bad experience and you look back at all those rounds, I think it's also important to remember your hourly rate or like what you're actually making is also decreasing. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something else to consider. Like it's if it is unlimited, they might actually you're going to end up doing more than you probably think, and then is it still worth it to you? So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to negotiate that for sure.
Yeah.
You'll
One
also
thing,
have a sense. Oh, I'm so sorry.
no, it's okay, Selena. I was just gonna mention really quickly, and y'all in the chat, feel free to start dropping your questions because we're gonna open up for Q&A shortly. But go ahead, Selena.
I was just gonna say, you'll also get a sense of how quickly the brand communicates to you from that initial conversation. And so
Mm-hmm.
it may be a matter of 2 to 3 revisions, but they'll happen within the span of 2 weeks, or they'll happen over the span of 3 months. And you'll have that kind of gut instinct reaction from that very first email.
Yeah.
Oh, and can I say one more thing
Yeah. Go
too?
ahead.
Just going back to the original question about like what to consider with opportunities. We don't talk about it in detail, but I think in this socio-political climate, we are seeing a lot more creators become even more selective about who they partner with.
Absolutely,
And I think
as
it's
it should
important to
be.
remember that you do have permission to Emmy's point, like investigate how a company works with creators, but also investigate their values and where they align. And if it doesn't align with you, like not all money is good money, and that's okay. So just wanted to call that
Completely
out.
agree.
And I think investigating brands, especially in this climate, but also investigating if you're working with a platform
Mm-hmm.
to do the deals, and you see and you do some searching, and you see that the payments have been delayed, like I think that you need to do an investigation into each person that's involved in it, whether it's like your talent when you sign on with a talent manager, whether you work with like an external matchmaking platform. It just feels like there's so many different people that touch a deal, and they could all like screw it up in their own beautiful unique way.
Accurate. I mean, the last thing I would say on this is that I think what I want creators and influencers to remember is that these are relationships. So think of them in the same way that you would your romantic relationships, relationships with your family members, you know, your whoever. And think about like what you want that relationship to be. I think again, we sometimes creators and influencers will literally leave it on the brand to kind of make all the decisions, but you really have to advocate for yourself and make sure that you know what you want going into this relationship so that you're not just tolerating any random bullshit from brands, because brands will do some weird shit whether it's intentional or not. And that happens often just because again the creator economy is budding, it's still in its infancy. So the best thing you can do is set yourself up for success by coming in with a clear head and an understanding of what you want to get out of this brand and make sure it's a relationship that is reciprocal. We're all about reciprocity, like Lauren Hill said. So that's the vibe. With that said, I want to get into the first question. So this one is on LinkedIn from Alex. Hutchie, I think is the last name. How do I balance running a business and producing content for partnerships? Should I balance selling to my audience and talking to my community daily? Anybody want to go?
I
Rihanna's like,
mean,
yeah.
that, yeah. Yeah, we could talk about that for like an hour. So I
I
do
know.
think it's an
Brianna is a business
ongoing,
owner.
it's a lot, okay? And
Yeah.
it's you get this too. Like it's tough to juggle. And I do
Mhm.
think it changes, like the balance will change depending on the season that you're in,
Mhm.
what your focus is, all of that. But I think the first thing to consider is if you are picking like one primary revenue driver for yourself or income generator, like what is that? Is it the business or is it brand partnerships or is it, something else? Because that'll help you start to at least narrow down like the balance between different types of content and how to juggle that. And I think too, being open to seeing what's resonating with your audience, like you just have to experiment with it. Content creation and building a business are beautiful experiments, but that's what they are. They're experiments. And
Yeah,
so be open to like
absolutely.
seeing what the results and the data are actually showing you and just pivot accordingly.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, I think the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that it gives you the opportunity to really design your life in the way that you want to. It doesn't necessarily always have to make sense to other people. And I think once I literally told myself that, I was like, oh, I can quite literally do whatever the fuck I want, which is a dangerous mindset to have, but like dangerous in a great way because you can really do all the things that you desire. I remember for a period of time in my business, I was consulting creators and I was like, I did it for like 3 months and I was like, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I just stopped providing it as a service because I can, you know? So it's like you really have to think about the things that you feel like you're very talented at, the offering that you can provide to a potential client or customer, and then just kind of go with the flow. Especially in this industry, things like change so often. So the way you want to like position your business or think about what your lens is on your business will change over time. Right now, I'm focused on like social strategy work, social creative director as part of my business, and then creating and influencing, building my personal brand as another part of my business. Last year, freelance work was the majority of my business. I think it was like maybe 60%. This year, it's actually creator work. So I'm going to lean a little bit more into that. And maybe by, the end of Q2, that will change. Who knows? But I think just allowing yourself the space to kind of ebb and flow will give you a little bit more freedom to kind of decide what your business looks like in each stage of your life.
It's all made up.
Yeah,
Every
pretty
structure you
much.
see at work is made up. So just build
Pretty
something that works
much.
for you.
So this next question is from Instagram from Izzy So Hot. Yes, girl. Any general practical advice for breaking in the creator economy? How do you decide on a realistic posting pattern where you can see growth? It's a great question.
We're
Anybody?
thinking.
Yeah, no, take your time. It's okay.
Wait, so she's asking about how you can see what's a realistic posting pattern where
Well,
you can see growth.
first the question is any practical advice for breaking into the creator economy. So let's start
Mm.
there. Um, and I kind of see why she asked her second question, but I'll let you guys go first. Any general practical advice for breaking into the creator economy?
Well, I think you actually shared great advice earlier, Jade. Like, first, you need to create content for yourself and then
Mm-hmm.
create it for your audience. And to kind of cement that some more, like, figure out what it is that you want to talk about and what
Mm-hmm.
kinds of content you like to create. Um, and then just start, which I know sounds, we hear that all the time, like
Yeah.
just start, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't know about you three, but sometimes I get caught in this like perfectionist mindset and then nothing ever
Yeah.
gets delivered. Just start doing it, like you'll learn along the way. But I think the best way to break in is just kind of start putting yourself out there. For the
Mm-hmm.
posting cadence, it's going to depend on the platform, but I'll let somebody else take that one.
I feel
One
like the
thing.
early stages are probably like just feeling less cringe about posting, right? Like exposure
Mm-hmm.
therapy. All those like tweets that are like, if I would be so rich right now if only I wasn't embarrassed to post a TikTok in 2020 during quarantine. Like that is like people, I think so much of starting out is just having that exposure therapy of like, let me test and learn and see what people resonate with and start building my audience. And I feel like also just leaning on like asking the people in your life, like, what unique value do you think I could offer? And a lot of times I think other people recognize things about us that we would never recognize about ourselves. And then that could kind of translate into like building content for an audience on social media.
Mhm. And one thing I'll add too, you don't have to be a creator to be a part of the creator economy. There's so much involvement that looks like many different things. So, if anything, I would say generally think about your skill set and think about the ways that you want to contribute to the creator economy. That could be as a creator and influencer, that could be as a consultant, that could be as someone who manages creators, as a talent manager. You could be someone that works on the brand side, whether it's like in the marketing advertising industry. Maybe you're like the creative that's building out the cool brand campaigns that creators will be then hired for. Maybe you're a writer reporting on the creator economy. There's so many ways that you can tap in. But if you are specifically speaking as a creator or influencer, I would definitely echo Brianna's advice. Just start the shit. You really just have to post. Like, once you start with that one post and just like, again, lead with inspiration and your intuition based on what we were saying before, you'll find that you'll kind of develop your own flow and your community will grow in response to that.
I just want to also say, find your community, find your people, and if you can't find your people, be that person for you.
Yeah.
It's a very scary thing to put yourself online. You're subjecting yourself to a lot of attention, and so find the people that are going to cheer you on. And if, like I said, if you can't find those people, then learn to be that person for yourself.
Yeah, very, very beautifully said, Selena. So, back over on LinkedIn, the question is actually about LinkedIn. So, what do you consider the path or your path to success as a creator without a following other than on LinkedIn? So, I think they're asking, and this is Martin Barrera. What is your essentially your path to creator success if you don't have a following on LinkedIn? And I honestly think that's a general question for LinkedIn or not. So, if you don't have a following, what's the path to creator success?
I don't know if I fully understand the question. Like, does
So
Martin
I think
want to get a following, or like, does Martin want to find another way to? Do you get what I'm saying?
I think his question is, if Martin doesn't have a following, like how can he see success as a creator? Because I think the assumption is you need a following to be successful as a creator.
I feel like maybe in that situation, a lot of it, like I think people can break into being creators by being on like the business side
Mm-hmm.
of the creator economy. I feel like Jade, you're a great example of that, of like you're a strategist and you understand the
Mm-hmm.
creator economy from a business lens, but then you also have content that's more like that can you can leverage for your own brand
Personal
deals.
brand. Mm-hmm.
So I think that person, yeah, that person seems like if they're focused on LinkedIn, that means that they are really focused on like business content. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that as you're developing that content and just like figuring your career out, you can also and you can try to, pursue a career in the creator economy on the back end, and then hopefully that also like leads you to monetize your own content as a creator.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback, I don't know why that question took me so long to get. It's like my brain glitched out, but I get it
That's okay.
now. One other thing to consider too is user generated content. I think a good example
Mm-hmm.
of this is Lloyd George, who also has a following on LinkedIn and I believe on
Hi,
Instagram.
Lloyd.
He's the best, and he focuses a lot on creating content that brands. Somebody mentioned this earlier, but it's content that you create for a brand that they will then use for like social or paid or the website or fill in the blank. You don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to have a following and be sharing it to your audience. So I think that could be a really cool angle too, especially if Martin, for example, is focused on like businesses and the B2B side of it. You
Mm-hmm.
could go that route too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like UGC platforms, like Kale is one of them, where they basically just like pay average people to post who are already fans of a brand, to post about it, and then they can monetize that from there.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of it is just like figuring out what the brands that you like and the things that you're like genuinely interested in, logging like, okay, when's the last time I recommended a product to a friend and it was because like I actually liked it, and kind of going from there, opposed to being like, I'm a creator, I'm going to find brands now. More like, I'm a
Hmm.
person, I like brands. Where can I take that?
Yeah.
I'll just also say that it's a matter of putting your following into perspective too. You can have 2 million people following you, and it's like crickets out there if you put something out into the world. And you can have 50 people following you, and all 50 show up when you do post something. And so I think, and this is kind of a larger discussion in the industry about how we attribute followers and engagement rates and things like that, and the importance that we put on it. But there is something to be said for the core group of people that are rooting for you, that are in your comments, that are liking all the time, that are following or very much following behind you. And so as we kind of build and kind of have these aspirations for these large followings, like we got to remember our OG people too.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that, and I'll add this, you don't need a following to be a creator. I think if we think about what a creator is, it's just someone that creates. And while I'm sure having a following and having a big presence always seems appealing and the best way to get opportunities, there are so many creatives out there who literally never touch social, don't have a following. Like, you have to remember that influence transcends digital. Take it back old school, like literally show and tell. Just show your work out into the world and tell people about it, and that word of mouth will build. I always reference this example, but it's kind of like in the early 2000s where people would be like, what does Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian do? They're famous for being famous. And I'm like, that's a brand though. Like, you know their name, you may not know what they do, but that's a brand. And I think it's funny because, not to compare them to, like, creators or creatives. Not to say that they're not either. I just think that it's all about how you position yourself and how you look at the experience that you want to have. There are creatives out there who literally their whole job is just creating experiential experiences, so events, and they don't really have a following. They get the community and they get the people in the doors because of word of mouth alone. So at its core, you don't need a following, but if it's something that you want to grow over time, I think it really just comes down to, again, what every one of these ladies were saying: invest in the community. The more you pour into the community, the more you'll get love back. And that's because it is a relationship. So, one more question on Instagram, and I think we'll wrap up shortly. I don't really have a POV on this because this is very platform specific. Um, I think her name is Hey Amanda Brown. That's the username. What love would love your take on creators using Substack and Patreon for closed communities. Anybody got a take?
I think that I just actually wrote a story about this, about kind of like moving away from in feed posts and going to kind of like community building on
Mm-hmm.
social media. I think it's a huge opportunity, whether it's on those platforms, or just kind of starting like a private channel on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a huge opportunity, and because there's a lot of data that shows that people are using social platforms to connect with friends and family and to develop like tight knit communities. And it matters less about seeing a creator's post on the main feed that got so many likes, because, what do likes mean these days? People might just like something out of habit and they don't actually connect with the content. So I think like finding ways to get closer to your audience in a way that's not just this like tired feed that you're trying to interpret, but it's more of just like individual connections in other spaces. I don't know if that answered. They were asking about like Substack, right?
Patreon and Substack, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think those are great platforms to test that out, and then, you can probably do community building across different platforms as well.
Yeah. I think a good example of like those kind of closed communities is actually one of the first ones I joined, I think late last year or early this year, because what is time but a contract? I don't remember. But it was the Women in Influencer marketing community that was started by Jessie Grossman. Shout out to Jessie. For those who are on LinkedIn, please give her a follow, and on Instagram as well. She started this community of influencer marketing professionals who are all women, and it was the first time I actually like paid to be a part of a community. But the benefits of joining were so clearly laid out on her website, and I was like, well, yeah, I'll join. And I never thought I would be someone that would like pay to be a part of a community, but what you get access to is so incredible. And I think it's definitely a revenue stream that a lot of creators should be considering, especially if you have a very niche community who want access to certain types of resources. So definitely a high consideration. And I think platforms like Patreon and Substack are great for those. I personally love a Slack community, but Substack, Patreon, also great.
I feel like a lot of creators are nervous about making the pivot from just doing content for free, basically, and then moving into like asking for money because they're nervous about what their audience will think. But I think a lot of people are like, yeah, we want to support you. Like we want to help you monetarily so that you can keep doing this and actually make a career out of it because they are like fans of yours. So I think those are just like two other examples of making a living through having online influence, and I feel like audiences are typically like really supportive of it.
And one example too, like you, Jade, I don't have a POV for myself because I don't use either. I'm gonna nerd out for a second. I hope this is a safe space. So I play Sims, and for anybody who plays Sims, there are really, really engaged communities on there. Like they follow certain designers that create. It's a whole thing. But anyway, they follow certain designers on there, and a lot of them have Patreons, and they charge like $5-10 a month and have 20, 30, 40,000 subscribers every month. And so if a monetary, like if you are focused on the financial side of it, there is a lot of value, whether it's in like a B2B space, a business space, or just something that you're passionate about. Like you can pursue that as a creator. I think it's cool to think about like the different ways that we can create. Can you hear the dogs again?
Yeah.
Oh my God. The different ways that you can create content and like the communities that you can be a part of. It's just think about all of your interests and passions.
Yeah.
I love that the dogs were so well behaved. Well, during like the rehearsal, they were going crazy, and then they were like, "Let me give her some peace."
Literally.
Welcome to my life. They're like, you've been on there long enough. Like,
yeah, they're like, time to wrap it up.
Yes, I personally just love the animals making appearances. Because Selena, your cat just jumped.
She's a diva.
Clearly,
This is her
I love
talk.
her. Yes, diva, love her. And your dog's Brianna. Very funny. Well, y'all, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone who has been joining the live, and I want to, of course, thank the ladies for joining me. Each of you, please tell the people where they can find you before we wrap up.
Just LinkedIn, Emmy Lederman. You can read my articles if you subscribe to eMarketer's daily newsletters, which is Retail Daily and eMarketer Daily. Also on Instagram at Emmy Tony Grammy.
The best username, by the way.
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's it. Selena, whatever, little slash Beaumont.
Perfect.
oh my God, they're barking again. And then you can find me on LinkedIn too, just Brianna Doe, or my website, weareverbatim.com.
Beautiful. And as you know, my name is Jayde Powell. I am Jayde I. Powell on all channels, and you can subscribe to the Creator Tea Talk newsletter, which I also call Loose Leaf, by the way. I feel like people don't know that. It's called Loose Leaf, which I think is very cute. But you can subscribe to my newsletter at creatorteatalk.com and also give me a follow on across all my channels to know when the next episode is. I'll be doing these monthly, and there will be a recording so you can access these later. And then I would also be on the lookout for my next announcement for my webinar. So stay tuned because I will be providing more creator resources. Thank you all for joining. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.